Good evening, all Federation starships in the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta quadrants, and the multiverse. This is the lowdown on lower decks. I am your host, head of the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group, Mr. Josh Pritchett, and as always, I am joined by my partner in crime, Mr. Chris Pavone.
Hello, everyone.
Well, Chris, here we are at the penultimate episode of Star Trek Lower Decks.
Hashtag sad.
Hashtag very sad. Very, very sad. So, yeah, and I got to tell you, though, this thing is setting up for some seventh season TNG kind of vibes, if you know what I mean.
Josh, I feel I should argue with you about this.
Ah, well, let's save that one for later on in the show. Right now, it's time for us to give a quick rundown of what happened this week on Lowdown with Lower Decks. Okay, so we open up with our heroes as they are in the Cerritos 10 Forward, just kind of perusing and taking a chill. But then, meanwhile, across the multiverse, a Defiant class starship is chasing down temporal rifts. And this Defiant class is commanded by none other than Captain William Boimler, Brad Boimler's transporter duplicate from season 2, who we all thought was dead, but apparently his death was faked by Section 31. Okay, so in the meantime, they bring aboard a new person, and that person is Lieutenant Harry Kim. Unfortunately, they have several Harry Kims. But apparently, Williams' crew of wayward fellow companions who are helping him to fix the multiverse consists of Science Officer T'Pol from NX-01 USS Enterprise, Curzon Dax, the most infamous or famous host of the Dax symbiote we ever knew. And we also have two doctors, a hologram of Dr. Julian Bashir and Elam Garrick, who apparently in another reality was a Starfleet science medical officer. Oh, and the hologram Julian and the Garrick are dating. Yeah, they're in love. Okay, so to answer that question, I guess. At any rate, so after bringing aboard Lieutenant Kim and introducing him to all of his fellow Harry Kims, all of whom are still ensigns, apparently. Yeah, I wonder whatever happened with that. At any rate, they are flying after a starship that apparently is responsible for opening up all the temporal rifts. Well, it gets very interesting when they finally do catch up with that ship, and it is commanded by Althea Woodward and her character from Star Trek First Contact. And apparently, in another reality, Zephyr Cochrane didn't create warp drive, he created multiversal travel. So she's been leading her own crew across the multiverse, exploring and learning about humanity by studying other multi-universe versions of various races. But William Boimler's kind of tired of the whole multiverse thing because it's just cheesy versions of his own reality. At least that's what he feels like. Meanwhile, though, Lieutenant Kim has decided to launch a plan of his own where he is going to take over the interdimensional ship, go back to his universe with all of his Harry Kims, and exist there where Harry Kims supposedly are appreciated and can actually advance up the chain of command. Well, it doesn't go very well. Curzon is wounded severely while trying to fight off hostile alien creatures. And T'Pol has to mind meld with the Dax symbiote to save all of its memories so as to pass it on to another symbiont. And Garrick and Julian are arguing over which dimension they're going to live in after this is all over, and finally just decide it doesn't matter what dimension they live in as long as they're together. And ultimately, what happens is the other Harry Kims all rebel against Lieutenant Kim, and he opens a giant, massive fissure in the multiverse, which is going to require the help of the original Brad Boimler to close. So William sends him a telepathic message somehow across the multiverse back to our universe. And of course, Brad handles the whole thing with bravery and dignity. No, I'm just kidding. He just poops his britches and yells, "We're gonna die!" And that is the episode in a nutshell. So, Chris, how are we feeling about this week's episode in the good, the bad, and the Gorn?
I mean, a dream come true for all the shippers out there to see Elam Garrick and Dr. Bashir finally together. It
Yes.
was a match made in heaven. We all knew it 30 years ago, so it just made sense to finally put those two crazy kids together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I kind of knew the whole thing with between Julian and you know, um, Esri just wasn't going to work out. Just didn't feel it. And somehow this feels right.
I mean,
Even Alexander Siddig has even said, yeah, they were supposed. Yeah, he kind of thought they were supposed to be a thing. But
and look at all the conversations they had over the years. I mean, those two just like fit perfectly together.
they did. You know. Um,
And I love the fact that even in this reality, Garrick himself says, I am a doctor, but I am so much more.
yes. I have always loved Garrick. I think pretty much anybody who was a solid fan of Deep Space Nine loved Garrick. He was always one of the top characters. Uh, the intergalactic man of mystery, the man of many talents.
He was meant to be just a one off, by the way.
Hmm?
He was meant to have just one appearance, and that was supposed to be it.
I know, and thank Kalis, he had one appearance in season one, and then he had five in season two, and then he had a lot more, and then pretty much the last season was every episode. Okay, it's like why didn't they just put his name in the opening credits? He was on. I think there were times he was on there more often than. Well, actually, that was the thing about Deep Space Nine. It was like, it was like Cheers in a way. Your character got created, and it was a one-off, but then they were like, "Nah, let's bring him back. We like this character, and we could do more with him." And it was like you had to say, like, you had Nog, you had Rom, you had Garrick, you had uh, Martok, you had Wayloon, you had Gul Dukat. Oh God, I'm blanking on this guy's name. The other Cardassian guy,
Damar?
Damar. Thank you. Yeah, Damar. Yeah, and they all like just they were there for like supposed to be one episode, and then they just kept coming back, and their characters kept getting you know built up over the 7 years of that show, and it was so wonderful to have get all the voice talents of all those earlier shows. And I mean, I think I would have been just happy. Wow, we got T'Pol, but oh wow, we got Andy Robertson, and we got his Garrick again, and Alexander Siddig his Julian again, and Althea Woodward, and of course Garrett Wong. I mean, wow, what a night of just it was just such a embarrassment of riches in this episode. Now I will say there's one thing I wish they would have done different. I wish they could have gotten Michael Doran to come in and voice Worf, but like had Worf carrying the Dax symbiote. Like he was married to Jadzia. They couldn't find anybody to put the Dax symbiote on when she got killed, so they stuck the Dax symbiote in Worf.
Well, he got a mention at least when Boimler says, It could it be Michael Dorn as no? Could it be Worf as a human when they're talking about all the possible nemesis that could have been? They thought at the time creating all the rifts.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot that one. Thank you for pointing that out.
I also just like that we got to see an energetic, even though he was pushing it in years, Curzon, and I just thought it was a great scene when he says, step right up. Everyone's going to be patient. Everyone's going to get their ass kicked.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, he was definitely going full on John Wick of Trill. Okay, in that one. Yeah, that was yeah, it was really nice because I mean the thing about Curzon, I mean, we only saw him briefly in the first episode. When they're transferring the symbiote from him to Jadzia, and he looks over at her and smiles, and then we find out they actually had a history together, because they put his memories into Odo for this Trill ritual where she gets to talk to all the former hosts because they put their memories in the minds of friends. And so Odo got Curzon, and he automatically shapeshifted so he looked more like a hybrid of Curzon and Odo. And
And he
which
didn't want to leave, I remember.
he did not want to leave. No, I mean, of course, getting to be a shapeshifter is to be pretty awesome, and one of Renee's best performances, honestly. I mean, it's hard to point out, a guy who had 40 years or more of acting, not just Benson and Star Trek, but just so many other things, and that's really
Liprazan, Liprazan, how I love Liprazan.
yes, can't forget that one. Or that he was the original Father Mulcahy in the film version of MASH. He was quite good in that one. Um, but I think it's just really such a great episode this week, and obviously, in some ways, I know we're coming up onto the uh, Section 31 film in about a month and a half. With Michelle Yao, and how we're going, sometimes I'm beginning to think though, and this is kind of going in the bad, but is Section 31 just getting to be this kind of, crutch or MacGuffin that we kind of fall back on now? What do you think, Chris?
I mean, I think it needs a change of perspective, much like what we had in this episode, where we start off with Boimler and the writers criticizing like the all we've seen so far of the multiverse is like different versions, like oh it's the evil Jaws versus like the good Jaws, and so it's the same characters, but it's like sort of a um, they're the same people just with a twist, but this focus on something much larger at a conceptual level that um, these are people exploring the multiverse, and they want to see just how humanity can advance or how different it is among the different dimensions, and it sort of opens Boimler's eyes to the possibilities before him. And I just also like again that instead of like, okay, this is the evil versus the good, he has a goatee, he doesn't have a goatee. This really took it up at a much larger scale. And so likewise, I think Section 31 has been sort of pigeonholed into like, okay, this sort of okay, not a Deus ex machina, but a okay when we need to like explain something that really doesn't fit. We'll call in Section 31. So I'm hoping that the movie also does something similar to what Lower Decks did. But will it? I'm not sure because brilliance is not often copied, and this episode truly was brilliant.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, this whole season has hit all the marks, and I think there is something really good. What you were I just want to build on what you were just saying about people about traveling the multiverse to explore humanity. That was Gene's vision, is an exploration of humanity, of the human condition. Um, because he was a great humanist, and Star Trek was this vehicle to explore human problems and human development. Um, you know, but with Klingons, obviously.
I mean, it goes
uh,
beyond. Their mission went beyond just planets. It was just like, okay, how have they developed? And in the end, they all had their own version of the Prime Directive that they did not want to interfere, and that's why they weren't like stopping. And I like that they made mistakes. I mean, they didn't realize that they were creating a secondary rift. Sometimes you do something good, but it can have unexpected consequences. And you know, I'm going to say there was something good and bad here. That like good that we had the Council of Kim, so to speak. Bad that like the one Kim, the one who finally got promoted, he's the one who turns evil.
yeah, I know. It's like, what the hell happened there? I mean, did he just get tired of Tom Paris's crap? What was going on there, man?
Perhaps. I mean, the other bad I would say is like I understand why the writers had to do this because the bridge crew was definitely due, and like I also we had to address the threat of what happened to Boimler's like transporter clone and what was happening with the rifts. But for 2 episodes in a row, our lower deckers have kind of been like put to the side.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I don't know. I think we have achieved a sort of, yeah, I mean, certainly last week's episode, which focused on the bridge crew, and uh, this week, of course, we didn't get to see our regular characters that much except at the very beginning and the very end. But obviously, we're setting up. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to mention was they found an alternate version of not Tindy of Mariner, and she was an engineer and kind of like okay, nervous about getting involved in stuff like this. Um,
She
and
excelled.
Brad had to be the lead. Hmm?
She excelled as an engineer.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing is that our Mariner, she's kind of the Jill of all trades. That she knows everything there is to know, and if she could just focus herself, she would have been a captain by now. But obviously, she's been dealing with a lot of traumas from the Dominion War. Um, so I think that yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see what happens next week in our final episode. But yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be a big. It's going to be a big, huge thing for our lower deckers as they get ready and they go into the big finale to save the multiverse from collapsing. So,
What do we think? Episode length of 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes? Over 30 or under 30?
for the finale,
The finale.
I wish they'd do a whole hour.
I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna say we get 36 minutes.
Okay, 36 minutes versus an hour. So, I mean, yeah. Well, I really kind of hope that we get that hour, but 36 minutes is fine. 30 minutes is fine. I mean, I was talking with my friend about this, and we get to say, hey, we got 5 great years of a terrific Star Trek show, and we really can't complain about that. That
No,
just on every level exceeded all our expectations. This could have been some stupid parody of things, and at times, yeah, it is parody. It pokes fun at the things that even Trekkies poke fun about it. But it's also been a show that was just incredibly well written. At times, was very dramatic, and Chris, you and I go to a lot of cons together. How many times in the last 2-3 years have we seen young people, teenagers to 20 somethings, dressed up in the lower deckers uniforms?
I will say this at Farpoint. Shout out to our friends at Farpoint. Great convention if you're looking for one in February. When they had Tiny Newsom there this year, and she walked out, there was a spontaneous chant in midst the crowd of "Lower decks,
Decks,
lower."
lower decks, lower decks.
You don't see anyone yelling Deep Space Nine or Voyager, but here everyone just like the love just came out, and so
Yeah.
Are there possibilities for spin-offs? Yeah, absolutely, there are. I mean, we saw like the Starbase episode. We could even have a William Boimler in his Defiant class ship flying around. But it's just sometimes when you have magic in a bottle, it is hard to like recapture it. And this is just really, this has been an excellent series, and it's going to be again very sad to see it go, but go it well. And
Well, there are two bright points here. Number one, Tawny is going to be is the head writer and I think showrunner for Star Trek Starfleet Academy.
I know she's a writer. I'm not sure she's like the showrunner. I think the showrunner is someone else.
Well, it's probably Kurtzman, but I know she is definitely one of the writers and probably one of the higher up writers at that. Um, so that's why I believe Starfleet Academy is going to be in great hands. And second of all, IDW has started publishing a Lower Decks comic book, which they have said is going to continue the adventures of Lower Decks in comic book format with the original artist doing the still pictures. And I've gotten the first couple of issues and it's terrific.
Which, of course, is in itself a continuation of the four-issue limited series from last year of Star Trek Lower Decks.
Yeah. Yeah, because they did that whole thing where they found Dracula in the holodeck in
Yeah,
that one. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
One of the things I also just liked in this series, and again in this most recent episode, is the depiction of couples. Like I love the whole exchange between Garrick and Bashir about why are we arguing, and Garrick says because sometimes it's just so much fun to argue. Like you had that, you had the complexities of the relationship between Jennifer and Mariner. Um, we saw in the episode with the upper deckers at the end, Captain Freeman having dinner with her husband. I mean, they never shied away from showing some um, aspects of being part of a couple that you don't normally get like shown on TV, but like they treated the relationship with respect, and so that was something nice to see.
yeah, I agree. It was very nice to, I like the fact that, yeah, these people had, we knew back in Next Generation that was a whole thing was bringing your family along to the adventure, but I think we see more of it in DS in Lower Decks. I mean, the fact that you've got a mother and daughter serving together a starship, and okay, Starfleet Admiral, who's you know the captain's husband, is able to sneak onto the ship and surprise her for her birthday, and I thought that was a great touch because we hadn't seen much of him this season, so of Carol's husband this year, so that was nice.
Yeah,
Uh,
everyone's getting their due at the end.
yes, everybody's getting their last shots in. So I mean, it was nice that this whole season has just been about tying up loose ends. I'm just, of course, I think we were talking about, we wanted to see, um, Jeffrey Combs's character come back, and uh, I don't, but I think I'm pretty sure we finished up his story arc last season, so I guess we didn't really need him back. Um, But yeah, it's a bittersweet moment because it's going to go out. Lower Decks is going to go out on top. I think this is going to they're going to really knock this one out of the park next week. But at the same time, it's a closing chapter on a Star Trek show that really I think really attracted a new generation of fans, and I hope it's going to continue forward with Strange New Worlds and Starfleet Academy. But we've wrapped up Picard, we've wrapped up Discovery, we've wrapped up Prodigy. Um,
Was Prodigy wrapped up? They're not coming back?
no, no, they wrapped it up. They just did the they finished the second season on Netflix. Um, by the way, okay, anybody in the sound of my voice, please do go watch season 2 of Prodigy on Netflix. It's awesome. Okay, it was just loved it. A lot of surprises. Uh, just it actually buffers up very nicely against the events of season one of Picard. So it's a nice transition. It really becomes at the end a real nice transition show from this earlier era into Picard. So um, I kept hoping this season we were going to actually have Worf in the Enterprise E, and we are going to find out what happened to the Enterprise E and why it's not Worf's fault. But I don't think we're going to do that next week. So, um, in any event, uh, so as we get ready to bring this episode into the space dock, Chris, would you like to tell everybody where to find you?
Thank you, Joss. If you are a cosplayer in the Maryland, DC, Virginia area, chances are you might be on my photo stream. Go to Bearded Cosplay on the gram and see if you can find yourself there.
Okay. And you can find me on Facebook under Josh Pritchett Jr. And more importantly, if you are a Star Trek fan in the DMV area, please do come on over to meetup.org and consider joining the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group. We are getting ready to head into our 20th year as an active meetup group. We are one of the longest running meetup groups in the Northern Virginia area. We are very proud of that. We have a very good group of devoted Star Trek fans, but Star Trek fans who also love Star Wars, Doctor Who, the MCU, Voltron, Flash Gordon, anything you can imagine. If it's science fiction or semi science fiction, uh, we got fans, we got friends waiting to meet you. So, like I said, meetup.org. Okay. So until we meet again one more time, friends, next week for the final episode of Lower Decks, I am Josh Pritchett.
I am Chris Pavone. Peace and long life.
Live long and prosper, everybody.